Give it a second. And we're live. Hello and welcome to Kirtan London Journey to Joy. This is episode 7 of our new podcast where we're systematically going through the Gita. We are your hosts, Madhva Anderson and Chaitanya Chintamani. We're very, very excited to be going on this journey of systematically going through this book, the Bhagavad Gita, which is a sacred text from India, and pulling out all the juiciest wisdom bites from it. And we're currently on chapter 3, which is called the Yoga of Action. Before we get into it, though, we always start our podcasts with an invocation. Those of you who follow Kirtan London will know what an invocation is. For those who don't, it's a prayer of gratitude to our teachers. We're asking for their blessings and giving them gratitude so that we may enter into this spiritual conversation with as much potential to take something nourishing from it as possible. So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jai.
Hey Chintamani.
Hey Madhva. Nice to see you.
Can I start with how special today is?
Oh my God, no.
I'm sorry. I have to. I don't have a choice. I have to start like this.
No.
It's Chintamani's birthday today, and she's done a very good job of hiding that from the world. But I'm going to sing you happy birthday.
Oh no.
It's terrible. I know. It's awful. You couldn't have expected anything worse. And I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry, but I'm going to do it anyway. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chintamani. Happy birthday to you. Woohoo!
Oh, thank you, Madhva. And thank you, Miranda.
We're getting lots of comments
Ananda.
that people did not know.
Sorry.
Let me just... Yeah, so glad that it's today. It's what an auspicious day to be having this podcast, Chintamani.
It feels very auspicious indeed. The good day to be alive.
How are you doing today, Chintamani?
I have definitely seen better days, but it's nice to be here right now.
This is a nice, nourishing opportunity to connect and put whatever difficulties have been going on in our lives to one side for a little while.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And you did give me an out earlier, but I was like, no, I would just like to do this and be here. So thank you.
We've got another happy birthday coming in from YouTube. We've got Veena Sharma, who's she's one of our integral Japa Sangha participants.
Wonderful.
Incredible lady, huge heart, and she's wishing you a happy birthday on YouTube.
Thank you, Veena. Thank you so much.
Okay, wonderful. So today we're talking about chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita. And the chapter title, if any of you are following, is Karma Yoga. Maybe Chintamani, you could start by unpacking those two words.
Karma Yoga. So karma being meaning quite literally work, activity, deeds, and yoga being connection, in this case, towards the divine. So karma yoga is the work which we can do in order to connect ourselves to the divine for our highest benefit.
Beautiful. That was a really well concise explanation. There's a lot to talk about in today's episode. So we actually started this chapter the last episode, where we had a guest speaker because Chintamani wasn't feeling great. And we had a wonderful person called Jai Jagannath. And we started talking about this, and we really got into the concept of real renunciation involves action. It means being engaged in the world rather than hiding from the world or renouncing, moving or pulling away from the world and going to the forest. That's quite a typical view of how a person may renounce the world on a spiritual path. You just leave everything behind and you go hide somewhere and just meditate. So the Gita is telling us the opposite is true. If we want to move forward in our spiritual life, we should be engaged in the world, and we still need to be renounced. We're going to talk about that word, but the renunciation comes from detachment from the results of our action. So we did already get into that, but there's more in chapter 3, and we're going to unpack the rest of that as well.
Sounds good.
So again, I always like to give a little context. Chapter 2, Krishna summarized the entire Gita to Arjuna. Chapter 3, Arjuna's a little confused, and he says to Krishna, in the context of the Gita, by the way, Krishna is the divine supreme person, and Arjuna is his loving, very dear, close, intimate friend. And Krishna is now instructing Arjuna. Arjuna's gone through a deep, dark crisis, and he's so confused, and he surrenders himself to Krishna, and he's asking for genuinely pleading for his advice. And this is laid out for us. This conversation was played out so that we could benefit from the instructions. And so Krishna is now instructing Arjuna. Well, Arjuna is now questioning Krishna. He's saying, you just said so much in chapter 2, because he summarizes the entire Gita. He says, be clear. What exactly do you want me to do? And so now Krishna's going into it, and he's saying, fight, or perform karma yoga, act. And so that's the context of what's happening here. And yes, and that's it, and period.
Right, because we just can't do nothing. The soul by nature just always feels compelled to do something. Serve someone, be someone, somewhere. So the soul has to always be engaged one way or another. If it's not doing something for its highest good, then it's doing something in the opposite direction. And Krishna is recommending that the soul becomes connected through doing this higher work.
Beautiful. I love that. Maybe you could unpack a little bit this idea that the nature of the soul is to be active.
Yeah, we just by, it's a symptom of existence, right? Is that you're doing something, everyone has that kind of, well, not everyone, but most people have that need for purpose. They have to feel like, they mean something, they have something to live for, and that would be our dharma, or our duty, our work, our life purpose. I remember, just comes to me now, that when I was in Mayapur in India, when I some years ago, I was running a drama group with a bunch of kids. So I did it for a few months, like putting out dramas for the community, and then I got kind of burned out and I took a break. And it was like inaction after months of just like, working really hard. And I was so fidgety, like I just couldn't be still, and the drama club was like going on without me anyway, so I had absolutely nothing to do, nothing at all. And in Mayapur, it's like life is really good, right? Like everything is brought to you. You don't have to go shopping, or you don't have to do any cleaning, and you don't have to do anything. You could just chill in your house and like, live that life if you want to. So I had the chance to do, everyone dreams about that time when they'll just do nothing, you know. And I had that moment, and I've never been so dissatisfied. Like I was like, I'm so bored. I just need to get out of here and do, you know. And yeah, I actually ended up organizing a concert in that time, because I was like, I had to do something, and I had all these musicians around me, and they were like, let's do something, man. So we ended up making a concert.
Did you record anything?
Oh, that was a long time ago. Nobody cared about recording anything back then. It was just like, we did it, and it was
Spontaneous.
Yeah, gone with the wind the next day, like almost like it never happened.
There's something beautiful about that, though, isn't there?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, nowadays you can't do anything without like a phone in your face, and back then it was much different. Like, you're just in the moment.
Someone recorded it somewhere. Everything's recorded somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
As
Probably like
in today's day and age.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it has to. It's really sad actually, because nothing is just stored in the heart anymore. Like you have to save it. And I saw there was quite an important event that took place in Mayapur recently, a funeral, and there were people filming that as well. And it was like, are you going to watch that footage back, or don't you wish that you had just been present
to capture the moment?
Yeah,
we can capture moments within our heart or on our phone. It's very difficult to do both at the same time.
Exactly.
That feels like a quote.
Nice. Yeah, but the point being, we can't just do nothing. We have to be fulfilling our purpose. Otherwise, the material nature makes short work of us if we don't have any. If we're just floating around, we're susceptible to difficulty.
Sometimes I feel like I'm very good at doing nothing. Are you sure that's not my nature? No, I'm joking, although I'm not joking, but I am at the same time. As in laziness, I struggle with it myself. And I 100% relate to your feelings of dissatisfaction and there's an emptiness, and you start to go, it's a little bit of a downward spiral, because it's not our nature to be lazy. It's not our nature to be inactive. This is definitely one way that is you can relate to this concept when we picture ourselves in our own lazy state of doing nothing, whether it's just watching Netflix or whatever it may be that we do. We feel most nourished and satisfied when we're active, when we're moving. It's like, do you feel, how do I word this? When you go for a drive, when you're driving somewhere, when you're going on a trip, isn't there some small feeling of excitement, but also satisfaction, or you are contentment. Do you know that? Do you know what I'm saying? Can you relate to that?
Yeah, that feeling of being headed somewhere.
Yeah, you feel like you've got purpose. I'm just driving to the shops.
Mm,
Okay,
a mission.
less so when I'm going to the shops. It's more if I wake up and I'm going somewhere. I know I'm driving this maybe an hour plus drive or something like that. And I'm going somewhere and I feel content because I have purpose. I'm doing something, I'm moving, I'm acting. So there's something to that.
Oh, definitely.
And the Gita is telling us that here. It's explaining to us very, very explicitly that our nature, the nature, not just our mind, not just our heart, but the nature of who we are, our very core, which is the soul, the spirit consciousness that gives life to this psychophysical apparatus that we inhabit. Love that term.
Yes.
That's the nature of the soul is to be active. And there are different ways that the soul is described that the soul's nature is described. And one of those descriptions is that it's active. And so it's definitely interesting. I know this is almost still touching on, we spoke about this last time, but I definitely see, I'm assuming most people listening to this podcast are somewhat interested in spiritual life. This is a niche podcast. It's a small podcast. One of the pros of that is, the people who are here really want to be here. And you can also make it more personal. I was reflecting on that today as well. And on that note, just a sidebar, if anyone has any questions, whether it's anyone directly in the Zoom with us, you can ask them. That's another benefit of having a small niche podcast. And if anyone's watching on YouTube, you can ask us questions. We're both here to engage. So that's great. So I'm touching on what I was saying in the last episode, which is people who are typically on a spiritual path sometimes get confused and think that the answer to spirituality is to withdraw. The trick is to withdraw from the world. This is often what's the word? This is a misconception, and it's often used as some kind of there's a word I'm looking for and my brain is not finding it.
A cop-out.
It's a cop-out, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. It's a cop-out. We're running away from what we're supposed to be doing. People are often experiencing lots of suffering. People are suffering in this world, and they find spirituality and they use it as a cop-out to then escape. They enter into escapism. Escapism is not the answer, and it's not genuine spirituality, and it's not genuine renunciation. Only a very, 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 very small percentage of people in this world are genuinely capable of that type of renunciation where you completely withdraw from the material world. It's an absolute minute minority of people who have that capacity. And as we'll read as we go through this chapter, even those people generally don't do that because they want to set an example, because our nature is to be active. So even if we renounce and we pull ourselves away from the activities of the world, our mind is constantly active. And we end up re-engaging at some point physically because we have no alternative. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, it reminds me a little bit of the tortoise and the hare. He says, you want to make genuine spiritual progress, the way is through action, but you do dutiful action. And where renunciation comes in, or detachment, because we were speaking about this earlier, we feel, Chintamani mentioned to me before the podcast that this word renunciation is an interesting one. Who really thinks about this word in the 21st century? Renunciation. But where you might say detachment from the material world comes in, that means detachment from the results of your actions. You offer your results to Krishna or to God or whoever, whatever you may call God. That's what the Gita is telling us.
Yeah. It means to do your work without thinking about enjoying or suffering or, making money or deriving any sort of external benefit. The reward is that you've done the activity and you've achieved this connection with the divine, and your the process and the goal are linked in that way. Yeah. So the detachment is all about the person being aloof from the external benefits of whatever they do.
Absolutely. This is where this is the term karma yoga. Yoga means connection. It means an activity done to connect us to the divine. And karma is work or action or deeds. And so when we're acting as an offering with detachment from the results, because the results are not the reason we're doing it, the purpose of our action is an offering. It's our only desire for result is to please Krishna. And then the activity itself is the result, right?
Right.
So whether materially we see success or don't is not the point, and we're not attached to that. What we're attached to doing is to trying to act to please Krishna. That's what karma yoga means. It's actually quite an advanced, sorry, Chintamani, it's actually quite an advanced stage. What were you going to say?
I was going to say even more subtly is, praise and recognition or criticism. Those are results too that we need to be detached from when we work. We can't be worried about other people's opinions or disagreements or agreements or whatever it is. Those things are results as well, and we have to we have to offer that without enjoying it or suffering from it.
See, it's definitely an advanced stage.
It's a lot. It's a lot harder than it looks.
There's a 4-step process. So it's so nice. When me and Chintamani have to study for this podcast, because we do have to study for this, I get to read lots of nice supporting literature around the primary book which we're reading, and one of them is by an incredible person. One of the pieces of text that I'm reading is by an incredible saint, in fact, modern day saint amongst in our community. His name is Sutapa Prabhu, and he's got an excellent thesis on the Bhagavad Gita and some very, very well explained, simple explanations, very practical. And he talks about the 4 levels. He's saying the bottom rung of the ladder is where we're behaving in such a way we don't actually care about karma yoga. We don't care about pleasing the divine. We're just doing everything to please ourselves, and we don't have any dharma involved in that either. There's no thought about acting dutifully or acting morally or acting for the ultimate good of ourselves and those around us. We just desire, act. Bottom of the ladder. The next rung up is where we start to become a little bit more intelligent, and we realize, well, I can act morally, I can act dharmically, dutifully, with principles, but I'm still doing that just because I'm more intelligent than the one down, but I still want to just be happy. I'm doing it for myself, but with a higher level of consciousness. Then if you go one rung up from that, as you start to do that more, that allows you to work up to the next rung, which is called, there's a Sanskrit term for it, which is Sakam Karma Yoga. which means it's karma yoga, which is this idea of offering the results of our actions and our actions themselves to the divine in part, because we're still attached. Sakam means mixed with attachment, mixed with lust. We still have our own personal attachment. So this is probably where I would place a lot of people on the spiritual path in this process of Sakam Karma Yoga. There's an understanding that we appreciate, okay, I get it. My intellect gets it. If I can offer my activities to the divine, if I can offer the results of my activities to the divine, I renounce or I detach myself from these attachments. This is what's going to be for my ultimate welfare. This is what's going to ultimately nourish me from within. But my nature is I'm still attached. This is why I would see, I see many people at this level. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm being, I'll come to you to this in just a second. Maybe I'm being too benefit of the doubt there. Maybe it's still a rung down. I don't know. Anyway, then the final stage is called Nishkam Karma Yoga. So that's what you might call pure Karma Yoga. Nishkam means there's no mixed lust within that. You're now just purely acting for the pleasure of the divine. That's a very, very high, elevated, advanced stage of consciousness.
It's nice to know that we can do it in stages. We don't have to throw the whole, we don't have to go straight into the deep end right away. There's progression, and it's gradual when we can forgive ourselves.
Absolutely. It's also just nice to exactly that, to know that there's a process, and I can place myself in that process somewhere. I'm accounted for. It's not just here's the bar, and if you missed it, you missed. No. There's what we're aiming for, but here's the process, and don't worry, we understand. And you're on the right path. It's nice.
That is nice.
Okay. I feel like we've nicely churned specifically Karma Yoga itself. Unless you had anything to add there, Chintamani, perhaps before we start to move on to a few of the other related topics of chapter 3.
No, I'm quite happy with that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Oh no, we'll come to that. We'll come to that soon. So one of the next parts then, Krishna goes on to explain this to Arjuna, saying act. He says fight, because Arjuna's dharma, he was what we call a kshatriya. It means a warrior by nature, and a ruler. He was a ruler by nature. He was a prince. And so his dharma was to fight for the righteous cause, not to hide from that. And then, I lost my train of thought, Chintamani.
Does he say that even he has to act? Is that the part where?
Yes, maybe that's where I was going. I completely lost my train of thought, but let's go with that.
Okay. Yeah, so basically he says quite nicely, even I have to perform activities, and whatever, because as an example to others, because whatever great men do, then the common man follows. So it's quite, I find it kind of sweet actually that Krishna, who is this like all-powerful being, makes work for himself just to show the other little people what to do. Like it's such a sweet thing.
It is very sweet.
Yeah, so he's just like, he doesn't have that urge that we have to do something. But he is interested in making sure that we are connected, and he makes that effort for us. That's quite nice.
Yeah, so he's explaining that, because I touched on this before. I said maybe there's only a very, very small minority of people who are genuinely advanced enough mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to genuinely renounce the world. But those people often choose not to renounce the world, and they maintain their engagement with the world, because what great men do, or what great people do, common people follow. And so they do that to be exemplary and to show those who are still on the path how they can move forward and move down the path.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was a simple one.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's much more on that one, to be honest.
I think that was it, really. And then,
well, there's something, because there's something I wanted to pick up on here, which is another one of the books that we read, or that I read in relation to Srila Prabhupada's Gita as it is, I'm also pulling from, there's another commentary on the Gita by a person called Rancho Prime, and he unpacks this certain verses from chapter 3, which are 33 to 35, and he says, walk the path given to you. So one of the things that Krishna says in the Gita, he's saying, better to do your own duty, even if you do it imperfectly, than to do the duty of another perfectly. And another thing he says is that even the wise act according to their nature, for all beings follow nature. What can repression accomplish? So there were 2 points here that I wanted to pick up on. The first one was this idea that it's better we do our nature, even if we follow our nature, even if we're performing our activities imperfectly, than to try and follow the duty of someone else, to try and do something that's not in our nature. Because what we're doing is ultimately we'll fail. And the key here is that we know ourselves. That's one of the things I pick up from this, is that it's so important that if we want to follow this karma yoga effectively, it's saying, do your duty. Don't do the duty of someone else. Now, what does that mean? That means we have to know what our duty is. We have to know what our purpose, and I think that's another way you could unpack, or another light that you could use when talking about this word duty, dharma. What's my purpose in this life? Why am I here? What was I born? What was I sent here to do? What is my offering that I have? I really need to do the work and find what most of us, I don't think most people know what their dharma is, what their duty, their purpose is.
it's very hard nowadays to find what that is. I think it was touched on in the last episode with Jai Jagannath. Somebody asked, right?
Yeah.
How do we do it? How do we find our...
We did touch on, I actually forgot we did touch on it. You reminded me, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have any answers for that question either. Yeah, some people are very lucky to just know what it is that they want to do. You know, they've already found that thing that makes their soul tick, you know, but not everyone is so lucky. And sometimes you have to be in work that you don't want to do just to survive, to make money, you know. It's not that easy. So to be able to do your duty, it's actually a great a blessing and a privilege.
It's so interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
I also don't have an answer to that question. I remember sharing a few things last time,
Mm.
at least about my journey. But one thing I would say is that I definitely think stage one to finding the answer is asking the question. Most people don't even do that. Most people don't even question themselves. What is my purpose? What is my deep down core nature that's dying to blossom and bloom and be an offering? What is it? I would say the majority of people never even ask themselves that question. So that's stage one. If you've got that far, you're already on the right track. And perhaps the answer to how that question unfolds and each person finds the answers is different for each person. I definitely had my way of doing it. I was very fortunate enough to come to the conviction at a certain point in my life to find the inner strength to resign from the job that I had at the time and embark on an adventure. I went traveling with my wife and we spent a lot of time in India, and we took a time out from the mundane or the daily rat race, which I was previously living, which was sucking my energy, which was really leaving me tired and drained and numb, mentally numb, to the extent that I wasn't deeply pursuing my purpose or even felt the energy to really ask the question deeply. So I was able to take some time out and reset and focus my energy on that. I really feel if you take the time and energy to ask that question, that's you will find the answer. I'm convinced of that. As long as you invest the energy in it, and it may not be the same way that someone else does, that I did, but if you're really sincere, you can definitely do it.
Yeah, I think that word you dropped in at the end there, sincere, you have to make
Right.
a sincere inquiry as to who am I, what is the point of all of this,
Yeah.
and yeah, just by doing that, then things start to line up differently. Um, it's quite a wonderful phenomenon, actually, that asking the question and being prepared to move in that direction gives you light over your confusion.
Absolutely. Sometimes we can be in really dark, deeply dark, troubled, confused spaces where the weight of not having purpose, of not knowing our dharma, of not knowing what we're supposed to be doing, may unconsciously be weighing you down. You may not be aware that's what's happening, but it can get to us, and there can be so many things really weighing us down. But when we do apply that sincere effort to uncover our dharma with a desire to do something meaningful as an offering with it, it's incredible. There's some divine intervention, it seems, for most people when they take that, when they are sincere about doing that. You often see, and you'd be surprised at what beautiful thing maybe just around the corner if you take that time to be sincere and ask the questions and do the work.
It definitely, you have to be open. You might be engaged in some other work and you might feel like you don't have a way out, but you have to be open. And again, sincere in your inquiry. We were talking about people who just ask advice and then don't follow through or don't appear not to listen to the advice.
Yeah, that was the next point.
Right.
Take us into it, Chintamani.
Do not unsettle the ignorant. That was it.
Oh,
Actually, we are going back a second. Yeah, do not unsettle the ignorant.
oh, is that already kind of going backwards? Is it?
Yeah, but it's flowing.
Oh yeah, yeah. You're right.
Mhm. Yeah. So Krishna
Forgot
says,
about that one.
a wise person does not disturb the minds of the ignorant who are attached to their work, but acts in the spirit of devotion and encourages them to do the same. So basically, a person who knows their work is not about to go around trying to convert everyone else to the process of karma yoga. He'll just get on that path and do his part, and everyone will see how wonderfully he's behaving, and then they will follow. That's the idea, rather than pestering people who are happy where they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is great advice.
It's I think it's really, really important for today, for the world that we're living in, where everyone can see other people's business, especially on the internet and so on. And we find ourselves so, it's just too easy to give an opinion or an advice to someone else. But right here, Krishna says, do not unsettle the ignorant. Let them be.
It's like the old saying, don't give advice where it's not wanted.
Right. Yeah. Don't give advice where it's not wanted. And I'd also
can't
like
hear
to add, don't ask for advice if you don't want it. That's
That's hilarious.
I I thought of a word actually when I got off the phone with you. I remembered an old joke about um, I hope that I could say the word and it won't sound like another word, but basically don't be an ask hole, which means like you don't
That's amazing.
don't be that guy who's like asking and asking and then not taking anything on board, and yeah, because the inspiration doesn't come to that person. It's the insincere inquiry. No ask holes.
It's so true.
Mm,
Sometimes we think we need to ask for advice or feedback because we think it looks cool to do that. Or we just do it unconsciously, maybe for connection, or maybe we want to tell the person, show the person, look how cool I am. Let me reach out to you for some feedback on this cool thing I'm doing.
mm,
And then when we get feedback, we didn't actually want it. Just don't do it in the
exactly.
first place.
Don't do it.
Be true to yourself. Be respectful of the other person, because otherwise you're going to become an ask hole.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Okay. I like that. Thank you for sharing that, Chintamani.
Most welcome. Yes.
Yeah, it's a really important point. We tend to I like how he's saying lead by example. Basically, is one of the things being said here. Lead by example. And another thing on this point, sometimes people are also, we want to give advice where it's not wanted. It tends to be quite a common human attribute. It seems to be a common part of our nature to want to do that. I know I'm guilty of that on a regular basis. I try and catch myself because I'm aware that it's not productive. It's not helpful. And This to me, although this to me ties in with some very fundamental relational truths about empathy.
Oh.
Because often when a person is sharing something with you, what we want to do is just give advice straight away. We can see their problem and we want to fix it. We feel like we can clearly see other people's problems. So obvious. Come on, let me tell you what it is. Let me help you. Let me fix the problem for you. If I just tell, obviously you can't see the problem. So let me just tell you and I'll fix it for you. But what we're actually doing when we do that is we're alienating the other person and we're pushing them away and we're actually making them feel attacked. Don't feel helped by that. If someone's genuinely asking and you know that there's a genuine question and with genuine love, you share something with them, that's different. But generally, we find ourselves offering stuff without it being genuinely asked or asked at all. That's where we have to catch ourselves. You can't save everyone, firstly.
No.
We can only save ourselves. And if we do that and we're leading by example, people will naturally want to follow. And when people come to you with stuff, all you really need to do is show empathy. Just listen to them. That's all you can do, really.
Yeah. That's what's so nice about Bhagavad Gita, actually, that Krishna and Arjuna, Arjuna's cracking on the battlefield, and Krishna doesn't actually say anything to him until Arjuna says, I'm asking you, like, I'm your disciple now, please teach me. He doesn't start advising him until Arjuna actually asks.
So true. It's so true. It's so true. Krishna's playful, a little playful with him until he surrenders and says, please instruct me. Thank you, Veena. Veena's commenting saying she loves that.
That's nice.
It's liberating as well. I know you were sharing, you had that experience that you had the experience of doing it, or you gave the advice when someone was asking you, but clearly didn't really want to hear anything, but you told them anyway. You maybe there was possibly your intuition was aware of that, but we like to be intelligent. We like to give advice. Yeah. So you gave it anyway. Sorry?
It's fun to be that guy. Yeah.
It's fun to be, we want to be the one with the answers. I want to be the guy with the answers for everything. I really do. And then you had you had some experience where it didn't resonate. It didn't go down well. It wasn't well received. It didn't leave you feeling good. In fact, it left you feeling a bit uncomfortable afterwards as well, the response. And then the same thing happened. And this time you chose
to walk away.
Walk away, yeah. Show love, but not give unwanted advice and just let it be.
It gave me a lot of peace, I've got to say. Like, just to be able to say, I'm not sure that I really want to give advice to this situation, and just leave it at that and wish the person well. Gave a lot of peace.
Yeah, man. It's the right thing. That's why. There was one more point. There's two more points I feel. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please let me know if there's anything else you were thinking of. So before we come on to the last thing that I was thinking of this section, I really wanted to pick up on this one phrase because I feel like it's another one of those commonly misunderstood parts of the Gita that's often taken out of context. And it's this sentence. In fact, let me just pull up the verse. I believe it's text 33. And there's a sentence in there which I will highlight. So text 33 of chapter 3 reads like this. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? It's that part of the sentence that I wanted to pick up on. What can repression accomplish? There are schools of spiritualism that take that section of this verse and misapply it. Now, I want to come back to a point that we've spoken about in the past, these three modes of nature. There are three modes of nature that are described, that are governing the activities and the energy of this material world. And they are goodness, passion, and ignorance. Sattva, Raja, and Tama. And we are constantly being influenced by 1, 2, 3 of these modes. Sometimes we're more in one than the other, and we often have we lean to one more than the other, depending on our lifestyle, depending on how we live our life. And which means that we can read the Gita, this pure spiritual wisdom, through the lens of both ignorance or passion, and misunderstand it and misapply it. And so some people read this, what can repression accomplish? And rather than understanding what it's really trying to say, they take it as an excuse to go out and do whatever the hell they want, because what can repression accomplish? Why repress my desires? And there's a school of thought within spiritual communities that do see it like that. And they think, you have some desire, go do it, do it, do it, do it, do it. And that's the way to get through it. Eventually, you'll realize that it doesn't satisfy you. That's the answer. That's the trick. But that's not what is actually being said here. That's a misunderstanding. That's someone reading this and reading it through the lens of either Tama or Raja, ignorance or passion. Let me see if I can pull up something from the purport here. Okay.
It's very interesting because I didn't see that as a loophole, but some people are really like, you can really look for you really get what you're looking for if that's what you want.
Absolutely. We're in these three modes. In fact, they're talking about it. I'll just read the purport. I don't know if it's touching on exactly what I was just thinking, but I'll just quickly read this purport because it's nice and short anyway. So this is the purport to text 33. Unless one is situated on the transcendental platform of Krishna consciousness, he cannot get free from the influence of the modes of material nature, as it is confirmed by the Lord in the 7th chapter, 7:14. Therefore, even for the most highly educated person on the mundane plane, it is impossible to get out of the entanglement of Maya. Maya means ignorance. Simply by theoretical knowledge or by separating the soul from the body. There are so many so-called spiritualists who outwardly pose as advanced in the science. He's calling spiritualism a science here. Interesting. But inwardly or privately are completely under particular modes of nature which they are unable to surpass. Academically, one may be very learned, but because of his long association with material nature, he's in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in his prescribed duties in terms of material existence. So again, he's clarifying that we are engaged in the world, but this engagement, if this is done as an offering with detachment from the results, this is Krishna consciousness. This is karma yoga, and this is liberating. Therefore, without being fully in Krishna consciousness, one should not give up his occupational duties. No one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Another interesting, nice point. Thus one may be freed from the clutches of Krishna's Maya?
Maya, that's something we haven't talked about yet.
Maya. Do you want to quickly give them a little rundown of Maya?
Maya. Maya literally means illusion. So
I
the
said
other
ignorance before. I meant illusion.
right. The other definition would be that which is not, that more poetic one given.
Yeah.
But basically, Maya it's a covering between us and our true natures as spiritual beings. That thing that allows us to believe that, this body is me, and I'm going to live forever, and everything I do is done by this body. That's all Maya, illusion, that keeps us tethered to this material plane, so to speak.
Beautiful. Thank you, Chintamani.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll touch on Maya more as we go through as well. It's going to come up as one of our regular topics that we touch upon, I'm sure.
So definitely.
Unless there was anything else you wanted to raise, I think the last point that I wanted to talk about was this question that Arjuna asks, which is,
let's go.
Krishna. So Arjuna asks Krishna, he says, let me see if I can find the exact verse. Hold on a minute.
I just closed the book and I had it in front of me, just fidgeting.
Well, I can paraphrase it. So he says, okay, fine, you're telling me to act, and I get that. And I should be acting in accordance with my duty, and I should be doing that as an offering to you. He goes, but what is it that sometimes impels people to act sinfully, even sometimes against their own will? There's something that is within us that almost forces us to act in ways that we know aren't right, that we don't want to do, but we seem driven as if by destiny, as if by force to do those things. That's a decent paraphrasing, would you say?
Yes, so you covered it. Yeah. Very nice.
I'd love to catch the verse if I could, but that's okay. So what's the answer, Chintamani? What is the answer?
Krishna says it is lust only. I forget the rest, but it is lust, born of passion. Oh, I find it here. Later
here we go.
Transformed into wrath. That is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So that's very poetic. Oof. It is lust, born of passion, later transformed into wrath. That is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah, and it's the verse immediately prior where Arjuna asked the question.
Yes.
So this also ties in with that last point I was saying as well, by the way, that people misunderstand that phrase, what can repression alone accomplish? And they use that phrase to support their lusty activities, basically, whatever they may be. Won't go into details on that one. But Krishna is very directly telling us here that it's lust which is our enemy. That's impelling us to act sinfully.
And lust is quite a subtle thing. I think in normal language terms, it's a bit more gross, but in context of Bhagavad Gita, it's like kind of all-devouring desire, which is selfish and also tainted by this want for personal gain and, basically a desire to enjoy those fruits for yourself, those results for yourself. That would be lust.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a far more all-encompassing understanding of the word than just simple physical lust.
Yeah. When you see those old school dramas, and they show lust, it's just like a lady in a red dress or something. It's really like simple, and everyone is just kind of waiting for that that obvious temptation to come and get them. But it can be a lot more devious. We can be compelled by lust and not even realize it.
Reminded me of The Matrix, where Morpheus is training Neo, and he takes him into the training. Have you seen the films The Matrix? You haven't seen
Never.
The Matrix trilogy? Are you kidding me?
No, I've never seen it.
It's actually amazing. I feel like they take so much. I swear the Wachowski brothers, whoever wrote those films, took so much inspiration from the Gita. I swear they did.
Oh.
There's a lot of similarities with, if you want to look at it in that way, about just the reality of the world. We live in this false world. It's an illusion, etc., etc. Anyway, it's a great film, and you should watch it. But you shouldn't. It's a distraction from the spiritual path. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I'll watch it.
What you said is exactly how lust is portrayed. He's in the training program. Morpheus, which is his guide, takes him into this training program. Neo, who's the main character.
Okay.
And he's trying to teach him and train him to be alert to all the potential dangers that he'll encounter in the Matrix. And then whilst he's in the middle of his training, this really attractive blonde lady in a tight-fitting red dress casually walks past him and glances at him, and you see him just distracted. And then all of a sudden, he's under attack. So you just made me think of that, because the way you described it, the traditional, typical view of how lust is portrayed.
Yeah, it's very literal. Yeah.
Very literal. These verses are so poetic. I'm just going to read a few of these verses. Well,
please do.
I like how also as well, he says, lust born of passion, which transforms into wrath. Because he's saying that our desire, when we want stuff for ourselves, generally I didn't move on and read. I'll do that after I got sidetracked by another point.
No problem.
When we're so attached to name, fame, profit, adoration, these are all aspects of lust, sex, desire, whatever it may be. It's selfish. We want it. And often the way the material energy works is that for me to win, when it comes to lust, someone else has to lose. So it's very, very selfish. And when we don't get what we want, when our lust isn't met or it's challenged, then that very, very quickly turns into anger. And then anger can impel us to act in ways that we don't want to act in, that when we're in our right state of mind, we would never do or say or behave in certain ways. And this cycle is very, very clearly laid out. And I believe it is even more clearly laid out further into the Gita, this cycle of attachment and how it transforms through a cycle of thoughts, activities, emotions, leading us to sinful action, and then leading us back into this cycle of activity, downward spiral.
That's very well put.
So the verse that I wanted to read was this: as fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror by dust, as an embryo by the womb, so knowledge is covered by desire. So poetically put.
It's beautiful.
Thus, knowledge is veiled by desire, the eternal enemy of the wise, which is never satisfied and burns like fire. Oof, never satisfied.
There's no end to it, which is why what you were saying earlier, what good does repression accomplish? The point being that, okay, if you don't regulate your desires, there's literally no end to them. You just want something else, something else, something else. There's no point thinking, I'll just go and do this thing and then I'll be fine. Like it doesn't end.
There we go. It really doesn't. Anyone who's, you see very, very successful people. One prime example is Jim Carrey. He famously said, I wish everyone could achieve every desire they ever wanted, make all the money they ever wanted, win everything they ever wanted, just so that they could see it's not what makes you happy. Will Smith recently said something similar in a podcast with Jay Shetty. He's saying, these things don't make us happy. It can leave you feeling so empty. There are so many people who are chasing constantly their fleeting, whimsical desires and are in a constant state of dissatisfaction, unhappiness. Mm-hmm. We see it so often when people win the lottery. Statistics show the average period of happiness that a person who wins the lottery goes through is 3 months, because it's new and it's exciting and they're spending and they're enjoying and they're just satisfying all their lusty desires. And then it enters depression.
Only 3 months?
3 months. The only people that found long-lasting satisfaction after winning the lottery were those who actually donated the majority of it away and kept just enough for their livelihood.
Interesting.
People ruin their lives, and it's a never-ending pit. You get something, and you always want the next thing. Now, I also feel like this should be clarified, because we're not promoting repression either, in the sense that don't get anything you want. But this is the whole point of karma yoga. To me, this is how I understand it, that we're playing the long game. We're playing the intelligent game here. Fine. So I'm not falsely repressing my desires, but neither am I overindulging in lust. What I'm doing is I'm discovering my purpose and then acting based on that as an offering, or trying to offer that action. At least I'm trying to act purposefully, dharmically, dutifully in this world. And then I'm trying to offer the results of my actions and my actions themselves to the divine. And what that means is I'm engaged. So if I can have a car, for example. I can have a relatively nice car. It doesn't have to be a cheap banger, which I have driven for so much of my life, in fairness. I've driven old Y-Reg Nissan Micras for the majority of my adult life. Only recently did I get what I call an adult car. But we can have family, we can have a job, we can have a house, you can have a car. The idea is not that we falsely repress all of these things. In fact, again, we're not renouncing these things. We're not falsely repressing these things. We're just trying to realize that these things are not the source of my happiness, and these are not where I place the focus of my energy in trying to achieve, in trying to gain and win in my life. What I'm doing is I'm using these things that I have as an offering. And that's when you actually get satisfaction.
Right.
You can be the richest man in the world, woman in the world. You can be the most successful person in the world. If you're doing it just for yourself, you're gonna finish feeling unsatisfied. If you're doing the same thing and you're trying to do that as an offering to the divine, the same thing is going to leave you feeling fulfilled, nourished, happy, joyful. You just got to develop what we call enlightened self-interest.
I love that. Enlightened self-interest.
That's it. I'm going to use it all the time.
Nice. It's repression as it's regulation. Repression versus regulation and moderation.
Ooh.
As opposed to wanton fulfillment of desires and
discipline.
Yes, discipline, but in a good way. Like we're still having fun.
There are studies show the Western world now thinks a lot about self-esteem, and what we're creating is low self-esteem narcissists. Whereas there are many cultures in the world that focus on self-discipline, and they find naturally self-esteem comes as a result of having good self-discipline.
Nice.
Just to throw that into the mix. And I'm definitely no expert on this subject matter, but I heard that and I thought that's very interesting, and it kind of makes sense to me. Good self-discipline is important, and it's an integral part of finding true, deep satisfaction. Thanks, Divya. Again, by the way, thank you for those of you who have joined us here live in the Zoom. Hopefully we can stop and chat afterwards as well when we finish. And if anyone is listening on YouTube, or if anyone is watching this back, come and join us live in the session, because then we can always catch up and talk afterwards, and we can ask questions and all of that. I hope what we've been talking about today has tied together and made sense. Did it make sense to you, Chintamani?
It made sense to me.
Thank God
you
for
never
that.
know. Imagine if I was just like, no, that made no sense. You're on your own.
Maybe that's why I asked you, because I knew I was going to get some affirmation.
I think it's been good. I liked it, actually.
Thank you so much. It was really, really, really wonderful to try and churn these beautiful points, go a little bit deeper in this very, very profound text of wisdom. And now I think it's time to hand it over to you, Chintamani, to carry us into the last section of our podcast.
So, Kirtan?
Which is Kirtan.
All right. I think you already did the Kirtan. You sang Happy Birthday. I think it's enough.
Don't encourage me. I'm considering doing it again.
No. Just getting my...
You've got original sound, and I'm going to put myself on mute.
Okay. I'm just going to sing Maha Mantra today. Because, well, there's never a bad time to sing Maha Mantra, but that wonderful poetic part which you just read,
about the fire being covered by smoke, the embryo being covered by the womb. What was the other one? The mirror covered by dust. Was
That's
that
the
it?
one.
Yeah. So the Maha Mantra is said to remove this covering. It cleans the mirror of the heart and removes all the dust on the consciousness and frees us from this all-devouring. Krishna later refers to it as an eternal enemy, lust. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
That was beautiful as hell.
Thank you.
Dang, you're so good on the guitar as well, Chintamani.
I started to practice because of Ananda and Jai and that conversation that we had at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Practicing at all. and it was really, really bad. Now it's just really bad. But
Ah, hashtag
thank you so much.
modesty. No, that's so, so beautiful. Thank you so much for carrying us into the end of our today's episode with such a beautiful melody, such a nice, sweet, deep, connected chanting of the Maha Mantra. And to wrap up, I would finish by just saying we host these Kirtan London podcasts every second and fourth Wednesday of the month, 7 p.m. UK time. We do them live in Zoom. You're welcome to come join us here in Zoom. We also stream them live to YouTube, so you can watch along on YouTube as well. And what we're trying to do is to create a community of people who want to go deeper, who, for whatever reason, have been sent down this rabbit hole of spiritual life, of chasing something that they know to be greater than what they're already getting, and go deeper together. Read the literature that's there, this Bhagavad Gita as it is. We're reading this book. You can read it with us. And if you want to join us live, you can ask us questions, and we can do this journey together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you, Veena. Thank you, Stella, Parsha, and for whoever else has been watching.
Thank you, everyone.
We will see you all Wednesday, the 26th of May. That's our next episode. And we will be starting chapter 4, called Transcendental Knowledge.
Exciting.
Fantastic.